What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of TheLead Houston, where it is all Houston all the time. And today we bring in a very special guest from the Believe Network, covers the LA Rams, Erin Coscarelli. Go ahead and introduce yourself to anybody that doesn't know you.
Yeah, thanks. I'm finger on the pulse when it comes to the Rams. I grew up here. Actually, I grew up in LA. LA native, went to USC, and started focusing more on the Rams this past season. So as I'm sure, are familiar with now with your new offensive coordinator, the Rams had a successful season by all stretches of going back to the postseason. Seemed like a lot of hope was lost before entering the bye. I think they started 1-4. So a lot's happened, and I think that lends itself to why I would imagine your offensive coordinator, your new hire, will see some success this season as he embarks on his first offensive coordinator position.
Yeah, and that's what we love to hear as Houston fans is success out of the offensive coordinator position. We did not have that this previous year with Bobby Slowick. But yeah, no, this is a lot of fun to have you on. We'll deep dive into Nick Caley a little bit. I know a lot of fans, though, the buzz right now, because Nick Caley's talked and everything, the buzz has just gone around the wide receiver department. And obviously, with we don't know whether or not Stephon Diggs is going to be returning to the Houston Texans. And when you hire somebody from the LA Rams or whatever former team they are part of, they immediately look at former players for that team that could be on your current team. And the biggest name, the biggest fish in the pond there is Cooper Kupp. And go ahead and tell us if you see Cooper Kupp as a fit for the Texans, and are you a bit heartbroken that he is on his way out for LA?
Yeah, I think a lot of Rams fans just found Cooper Kupp to be such a breath of fresh air in the locker room. He had I think he had a great podcast with his wife. And, the relationship between him with McVay, and then obviously, most importantly, his relationship with Stafford. It was disappointing to see that the Rams don't think they can work out a deal. Now, I'll give you the bad news before I'll give you the good news. I think part of the reason why they are deciding to part ways, which was really interesting because it was the Monday before the Super Bowl. And I had just landed in New Orleans, and Cooper Kupp comes out with this announcement on social media that the Rams are going to part ways with him. So it was interesting, and it's always interesting. Myles Garrett did it as well. These players sort of making their own announcements about the moves that the teams should make or could make or will make during the offseason. And of course, one of them, which was big news out of LA, was that the Rams may not keep Cooper Kupp. Look, he's 31 and he hasn't been healthy for an entire season since 2021. And when you use those numbers and you combine them with an expensive payday, the Rams are savvy and no one does it better in the NFL when it comes to GM and thinking about the future and strategizing. And that was the thing that's very tough right now for the Rams, right? The Rams have an older quarterback. Stafford's 37 years old. He's still elite. He's still, slinging it. But they want to diversify the offense, which is what Sean McVay said in his press conference as they were out of playoff contention, losing to the Eagles. They have Puka Nacua. So what does that mean for Cooper Kupp? Could we see him in Houston? I think he would be a great fit. CJ Stroud's not exactly the same type of QB as a Stafford, but like you said, coaches want to retain guys they're familiar with. So whether it's Cooper Kupp, we mentioned before we hit record that Demarcus Robinson could be a good add. And they do have depth at the wide receiver position. Jordan Whittington was a preseason darling, a later round draft pick for the Rams. So I imagine, I mean, do I, in my tea leaves, think that Cooper Kupp is going to be a Houston Texan? I think you're absolutely right that Caley may want to get in guys he's familiar with. Nick Caley, your new offensive coordinator. Do I think it's going to be Cooper Kupp, Demarcus Robinson? It could be, like you even said, Tutu Atwell. It could be somebody. I don't know who it is. And of course, it all matters with the numbers. Do the numbers fit? And do they fit the scheme for the Texans? Time will tell, but potentially.
Yeah, I mean that's what we're trying to hear as Texans fans. We love to obviously there's a lot of interest here in the fan base for Cooper Kupp. That's anytime there's a big wide receiver on the market, that always becomes the case. But yeah, I mean Nick Caley in to the LA Rams, they've noticed amongst here when we're doing this deep dive around Nick Caley is the blocking from wide receivers, and that is something that the Texans fans are somewhat used to with Bobby Slowick. But it just seems like when Nick Caley was talking at the podium, he talked about it starts with all 11 guys. And he even mentioned the halfbacks. He even mentioned the wide receivers by position specifically. So I know Cooper Kupp can block. I've seen him block. I've seen Puka Nacua block. He's joked about it on the Pat McAfee show. We've seen many
Yeah.
other wide receivers on the Rams that are willing blockers. It's not that they can block. It's just that they're willing blockers and they're helpful for the team. So in comparison to Houston, with Demarcus Robinson and Tutu Atwell and Cooper Kupp, do you think, and this is just me, do you agree? Is it better to just go with the big guy in Cooper Kupp, or is it better to bargain bin a little bit and maybe get 2 for 1 with a Demarcus Robinson and Tutu Atwell?
It's interesting. It's hard for me to answer that
Yeah.
question, but what I will say is I like that you brought up the blocking. And one of the things that I think Caley is, pretty reputable about, right? He was with New England as a tight ends coach. He coached
Mm-hmm.
Gronk. He's coached Tyler Higbee, who was an absolute monster for the Rams in the 2023 season. He had sustained an injury that took him, I think, 9 months to come back. But one of the things that I think when you look at potentially why was Nick Caley the right hire for Houston, I think you have to think about what is right for CJ Stroud. And Nick Caley feels like the right fit for me based on a lot of what you just said, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, as a former tight ends coach, which I want to say he's won 2 rings with Bill Belichick in New England in coaching, Gronk and so many of those other tight ends that came out of there. He has an overall understanding of so many nuanced parts of the game, not just the blocking part, not just the run game. One of the things that was really interesting that Sean McVay said, because it's always amazing how as the Rams enter the offseason, pieces of his coaching staff end up getting picked
Mm-hmm.
off, right? And then yet still somehow they find success. He said why he thinks Caley is going to find success was because he has such a deep understanding of that position. As a tight ends coach, you don't really think of it as such an all important position, but it is. It's a key component of the offense for reasons of needing to block, needing to understand the pass game, needing to understand all those nuances. And I think as we've seen CJ Stroud sort of try to find his right footing, he regressed a little bit this season. Obviously, offensive line issues. Wasn't he sacked? I mean, almost twice as many sacks this year. And he went from 38 to something in the 50s. I can't
Yes,
recall,
it
right?
was 54 sacks.
54 sacks. I mean, that's a lot for your guy to
Mm-hmm.
take. So offensive line and the tight end position or the wide receiver position, having an emphasis on blocking and protecting your quarterback, I think is going to be one of the things we're going to see from Caley for sure this year.
Yeah, talking about his tight end as a tight ends coach, they asked him that at the podium in his introductory conference, and he had a very short answer. It was like 3 sentences 2 out of the 3 sentences were the same exact sentence. I love tight ends with a big smile. And so yeah, I mean, just D'Amico talking about him, he complimented Nick Caley as someone that is energetic, has leadership, and is an understander of schemes, whether that's the run scheme, whether it's the pass scheme. Give us some, as Texans fans, when you think of Nick Caley, what is something that you can excite the fans about here in Houston a little bit?
I mean, there's so much to be excited about. Yes, like you just mentioned. First of all, he's young. I think he's 42. He's
Yeah.
energetic. He's eager. I think he can't wait to get his hands on CJ Stroud and that
Mhm.
offense and see what he can do. But one of the things I'll say about him that I think is very positive and optimistic was just take this season for the Rams alone. They had to deal with a ton of adversity. You know,
Mhm.
he's had to see it all. I think being under Sean McVay first and foremost is truly one of the best advantages that you get working under a guy who's just absolutely brilliant like Sean McVay. But one of the things Nick Caley got to see this season was offensive line issues. The Rams had like 7, 8 different iterations because of so many different injuries that the Rams had in the beginning of the season with guys going down, you know, Stafford running for his life, sacked, you know, so many times. I think the optimism for Texans fans is that Caley has had to sort of be in the trenches and go through a lot of challenging moments this season, coming out of a huge hole and then winning the NFC West. You know, it's not always like rainbows and butterflies. This is
Yeah.
what this season was, a really hard season for the Rams. And I really tip my cap to so many of the coaches that had to figure out how to pull a rabbit out of its hat. You know, I think everybody, and I'm sure you as well, Harley, really counted out the Rams this
Yeah.
year because, you know, they just couldn't compete early in the season. They had a lot of injuries. So I think being you know, around Sean McVay, battle tested, watching them sort of come out of the hole that they had dug themselves in due to a lot of injuries, due to a lot of sort of young. I mean, remember too, we didn't have Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald retired. We had to figure
Mhm.
out how to draft smart and put young pieces together. And Nick Caley got a front row seat to all of that. So I think that's something that if you're a Texans fan or if you want to see CJ Stroud take the next step forward, I think a young guy that's been, you know, battle tested and has watched Sean McVay do it for the past couple seasons, I think. And then he's got Bill Belichick. I think he was with the Patriots for 7 years. I think
Mhm.
I think he's got all the right reasons why somebody like D'Amico and the Texans front office wanted to figure out. So I think he might be the right guy for you guys.
Yeah, he everyone, when we were looking at a lot of the stories around Nick Caley, there was multiple people on the Rams staff that said Nick Caley sounds exactly like you're leaving a conversation with Sean McVay. And when we had an introductory conference with him, it wasn't even, yes, he speaks like Sean McVay, but I think literally just the flat out his tone of voice sounds just like
Mm-hmm.
Sean McVay. Like it literally sounds like Sean McVay. Like, not trying to say like, yeah, he's taking any, like his speech pattern sounds like Sean McVay.
It's
Like,
terrible.
what is this? I thought we I was like, oh, okay. Did we pull a rabbit out of the hat out of the LA Rams? Do they know they got Sean McVay over there at head coach? Because Nick Caley was fun. He was a fun listen. He was a something that in just sounded refreshing in this building. And I think the biggest quote and takeaway we got from him was not pounding a square peg
Mm.
into a round hole. And that is something that Bobby Slowick struggled with. I think Bobby Slowick could still find success in this league. I just think he was too green. I think he was just too early for him. And he never had a positional coach job. Like, he's never had to be able to be a leader of men and be a positional coach. Whereas Nick Caley, he's done that for years with the Patriots and now with the Rams. Like, not pounding a square peg into a round hole sounds refreshing for Texans fans. I'm excited to see what he can do. He also talked about scheming around the players. And, again, this is just something we love to hear as Texans fans, we also get a little New England in him.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of the fans here, Houston was accustomed of the New England way kind of thing for many years with Bill O'Brien.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that y'all noticed too? Is there, well, even though Sean McVay's your head coach, and that's probably not, but offensively with Nick Caley, is it just, do you think you're seeing a little bit more New England stuff instead of the Rams? Or, how should we prepare for that? Because fans here, they don't like the New England stuff, man. They do not.
Well, I think to touch on your first, what you first said that really stood out to me, and it was something that Nick Caley said when he met with the media with you guys, and I appreciate it as a fan and what we've seen in Sean McVay. Exactly what you said, which was the square peg, round hole. But then it was also this quote that stood out the most to me, which is, I'm excited to get the opportunity to evolve this scheme. It's not going
Mhm.
to be my spin. It's going to be what's best for our players. And I think
Yeah.
when you think of Sean McVay, why quarterbacks? Let's just take the quarterback position. Baker Mayfield, Jimmy Garoppolo. Why do they go to LA? Because they trust McVay. McVay has this Oprah effect where everything he touches turns to gold. People trust him, players love him. And I think that's what you're seeing in a guy like Nick Caley. He's like, hey, it's not going to be my show. It's going to be the show that complements the Texans offense and CJ Stroud. Now, you talk about the Patriots influence, and look, at the end of the day, I think that was attractive to McVay and company, was that they were disciplined, that they were innovative on offense. And I think, when you think of the Patriots, it's, at least for me, during those glory days, it was the two tight end set. It was Gronkowski and Brady. So again, one of the things that I found was really interesting when Sean McVay was sort of giving his blessing to Nick Caley as he moved on. Yet again, another offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator hire out of the Rams staff, was that he finds the tight end sort of coaching position, which was his first position as a coach, Sean McVay, such an added asset. Needing to really truly understand all elements of the game. And if you think about who was the right fit, if you're the Texans front offense, it's how can we find ways to protect CJ Stroud and give CJ Stroud like the confidence to build. And I think, as we've talked about it, the big issue that you guys had was your offensive line and protecting him. Obviously, he's a different type of QB than Stafford. But at the end of the day, one of the things he wants to impart is just the fundamentals. So he's a smart guy. He's young. He's energetic. He's passionate about his players. Players love him. Sean McVay loves him. You know, do I think, oh, because he was with the Patriots and you guys with Bill O'Brien? No, I don't think I would be worried about that. I think we're trying to, find something wrong rather than all of the reasons why Nick Caley could and should have success with the Texans this season.
It's the second time you've mentioned it. How different do you think CJ Stroud is from Matthew Stafford?
I mean, other than the obvious, I look,
Yeah, well, yeah.
Stafford is not a mobile guy.
Mm-hmm.
And in many ways, he's almost like another offensive coordinator out there on the field, whereas CJ Stroud's still trying to figure out the speed of the game, the comfort of the game, his own confidence. I mean, they couldn't be more opposite.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that actually lends itself to CJ. CJ's just a way more dynamic quarterback than Stafford. I mean, that's like getting the keys to a Ferrari if you're Nick Caley,
Yeah.
So I think the goal for him is to find out what does that look like when you create an offense and a scheme that fits best for your players? What guys does he need to bring into the building to support and complement CJ's game? I think the good news is look at what Nick Caley's done with a guy like Stafford, who doesn't have all the fun tools in the tool belt that CJ Stroud can do when given the opportunity to run away with it. So I think it's a positive. Even though they're very different, I think it's a positive for CJ Stroud.
Yeah, I asked that because CJ has been super complimentary of Matthew Stafford's game. He had the viral quote on the Gilly podcast saying that Matthew Stafford was in Aaron Rodgers'
Better.
situation. Maybe there's
Yeah.
more rings his way. So that was fun. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
similarities between the Rams and the Texans than we think, because when we had the in training camp, when y'all came over to Houston, I can't think of the wording right now, but the scrimmage at training camp. I know there's another word for it though. But I was there, yeah, I was there at training camp watching that, and myself and my good buddy Ruben had a little discussion with one of your players on the defensive side of the ball. I can't think of his name right now, but I think it was It wasn't Jared Verse, and it wasn't Brandon Fisk. I can't remember his name right now, but he was definitely talking trash to me and Ruben. We had a lot of fun with him. But CJ Stroud was just right next to Sean McVay. There's that viral photo of them here in Houston, right next to each other. And you talked about quarterbacks like Baker Mayfield being in LA, wanting to go to LA, like Jimmy Garoppolo wanting to go to LA. Like these guys wanted to go here. CJ Stroud has been highly complimentary of the LA Rams scheme, and he's been very talkative about Sean McVay in general. How much success do you see this year with this Houston Texans offense? Just a prediction with Nick Caley going into this season.
I mean, the sky is the limit. I think that's the exciting part, is you have someone from the lineage and the tutelage of Sean McVay. And look, Caley'd been given offers before, and I think he even had, don't quote me, but I think he also had an opportunity to meet with Tampa.
Yeah, okay,
He
yeah.
specifically chose the Texans. And I think CJ Stroud is obviously number one reason why. And I think Nick Caley wouldn't take that opportunity if he didn't think that there was going to be some magic had. I mean, why? He was in a very cush position with the Rams. So clearly he's excited about it. The Rams bummed to lose him. He was such a dynamic guy. But I think he's excited to take a fresh opportunity, a new challenge, and work on very tangible things with CJ Stroud. It's not like you guys need a complete facelift, just some key pieces in there to protect him.
Yes.
And I think Nick Caley might be the guy to figure out what that algorithm looks like. So I'm excited for the Texans. I think a lot of fans are in good hands with what Nick Caley can do for them this season.
Yeah, well, thank you, Erin. I do appreciate you. I know we are running up against the time for you. So again, thank you so much for joining for the Houstonians, man, our fans here. We're very excited about Nick Caley. We're excited about his potential and the offense's potential here. We'll see what happens with your LA Rams. They look like a Matthew Stafford is he on his way out? Like, I don't know what's going on there. It's kind of scary over there in LA, considering y'all just won a Super Bowl a few years ago. So no, man, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Erin, if you got anything to plug or any projects you want, you go ahead and give us your exiting thoughts here.
Oh, yeah, no, thank you for having me, Harley. Of course, just check out social media, Erin Coscarelli. Like I said, LA native. I cover the Rams and sort of try to keep everybody in the loop when it comes to what's happening in LA.
So y'all heard it here, Texans fans. You want to know something in the loop? Erin is your girl. As always, guys, Astros, Rockets, Texans, y'all know the drill, man. Like, comment, subscribe. Y'all have a very blessed day.